Last year, I made a pretty bold statement. The Yamaha Sidewinder is the most powerful production snowmobile ever. Or, in the words of Yamaha, this might have been a little premature because for 2019, Yamaha dropped the hammer. The last version of the SRX lived in the days when triple two-strokes dominated the industry, and the fastest guy across the lake, well, he's the one that had bragging rights. Since those days, there's been a definite shift to powder performance, which has sacrificed top speed. Yamaha felt this lake racer type customer needed a sled that was better suited to them, and they had the power, they had the name, all they had to do was make a few tweaks and they could get it done. The first change Yamaha made was to the ride height by lowering it. This lowered stance helps the sled cut through the air at speed because it has less of a hole to punch through. And it also lowered the track drivers, helping to cut down on the angle of attack, improving rolling resistance. Interestingly though, Yamaha didn't limit the travel. The SRX has the same as other sleds in their lineup, they essentially just lowered the ride in. The other major change, and in my opinion the real secret to the SRX, is the track. It's a 137-inch ripsaw with only 1-inch lugs. This took a bunch of weight out of the track, making it easier to spin faster, and the smaller lugs catch a lot less air, which becomes a real thing when trying to go fast with big lug tracks. It's also a 2.86 pitch, and it's fully clipped to, again, improved rolling resistance. Pretty much everything else on the SRX is the same as other Sidewinders on the snow, and these tweaks simply improve the efficiency of the SRX, making it faster. But it's not all about straight line speed. Corners are just as much fun, and I think the SRX is the best handling Yamaha I've been on in a while. The low ride height has a bunch to do with this. With the lower center of gravity, the weight of the SRX doesn't want to pull the sled over as much in the turns. But I think it's the track that's made the biggest improvement. I rode those old triples a lot back in the day, and let me tell you, you could steer that machine as much with the rear end under braking and acceleration as you could with the front end and the skis. And that was because those old tracks were about a ½ inch high and they would really let you slip. These new machines with these big meaty lugs, they just don't let you work the back of the machine as much as in the corners. With the relatively small lug track of the SRX, you could get the rear to step out controllably under trail braking into a corner and then use the power and track slip to your advantage off the center and to help you get pointed off. The SRX even felt like it reacted better to body English than other lighter sleds I rode under the same conditions. I have to say, the trails that we were on were perfect for the SRX. We were first tracks on flat, squeaky trails, and the corners were a mix of long sweepers and not so tight 90s. Conditions were good for the SRX and it was fast, but it was its balance of grip front and rear that blew me away. And even as conditions deteriorated and the trails got tighter, the SRX still performed better than I expected. But there's a but. The modifications made to the SRX in the pursuit of speed do come with an obvious price. The lower ride height means you have less travel under you for rough terrain. It's easier to push through this remaining travel on a gravity hit or sucker bump, or if you catch some unexpected air. The SRX definitely bottoms out a little quicker and a little harsher than regular Sidewinders. The 1-inch lugs on the track also sacrifice traction in deep snow. Get off the trail into even moderately deep powder, and you need to be thinking ahead about where you're going, where you're going to stop, and how you're going to get going again. But there's a but to that but. I don't think SRX buyers care about these sacrifices because the benefits of these changes outweigh them for them. And I don't think these guys care about carving up powder, and I think they will forgive suspensions for the odd hit because that's the way they rode back in the days of the last SRX. What the SRX buyer is going to care about is that when he comes to a big flat lake, Yamaha Blue is going to be out at the front of the snow dust cloud as he leaves everybody else in it. Except for maybe this guy, the Cat Thundercat. It's no secret that the brother from another mother to the SRX is the Cat Thundercat. Now the DNA of both these machines are practically identical, and if there's any differences between the two at all, well, that comes from the philosophy of their families. Like the SRX, the Thundercat is set up for speed with the lowered ride height and 137 by 1-inch ripsaw. However, each sled is refined by the engineering and testing teams at each individual company and honed to their specifications. All major components remain the same. Engine, chassis, and turbo are all identical, so neither sled can be called out as a ringer. That leaves refinement changes to things like clutching, gear ratios, and suspension setup. Another place these sleds differ is in the ski department. Yamaha continues to install their Tuner 3 up front, while the Cat has their Procross 6 ski. And honestly, this is one area the Cat comes out ahead of the Yamaha. Back to back, I like the Cat ski better. On hard packed trail, the kind that squeaks when you walk on it, both skis performed really well, but when things started to loosen up, the Cat ski had a bit more bite to it, which makes it the more versatile of the two skis. Each sled is equipped with the Fox Zero IQS shock package that is 3-position adjustable right from the handlebars. I liked this system when it was manually adjustable on each shock, and although having to stop and turn the clickers yourself by hand was a total first world problem, the electronic control is a nice touch on high-end rides like these. The IQS is easy to use as a rider, and the 3 positions are different enough from one another that you can really feel the change. This simplicity really is the answer for every rider that's looking to adjust their sleds to changing conditions without having to totally geek out on suspension setups. Riding the Thundercat is almost exactly like riding the SRX. In fact, if you were to close your eyes, you wouldn't be able to tell which sled you were on. But I wouldn't close your eyes for long if you're on the gas with one of these sleds. The biggest difference in feel is in the skis. Everything else is so equal, it's tough to choose which factory has dialed in their version better. Each sled is tremendously fast, balanced, and should be classified as a double Black Diamond expert level snowmobile. If you're a rider who's looking for the ultimate 4-stroke turbo lake and trail missile, either one of these sleds will get the job done. I did manage to find one little thing that crept up on each sled, and that was brake fade. Being as well balanced as both these sleds are, and with the Hayes braking systems being as good as they are on each machine, I was able to modulate the brakes really well coming into the corner and trail braking in deep without locking the track up. This put a bunch of heat in the rotor and caliper, and each sled suffered from a bit of brake fade in a relatively short amount of time. This problem is not unique to these sleds though, and it's an easy fix by changing out the brake fluid to higher temperature rated stuff. Now, I suppose you can always back off a bit, but there's no fun in that. Without having any timing and scoring equipment on hand, and the only device at my disposal being my butt, and as scientific as my seat of the pants feel is, it was not accurate enough to choose which sled is faster in a straight line, or which machine can negotiate a corner better than the other. I'm sure the internet forums on each side of the Yamaha fence will be yelling at each other, saying their version is the fastest, or which is the best all-road snowmobile. But is that so different from the days of the past SRXs and T-Cats? I don't think so. Now, the only place to settle this disagreement is the one place these sleds were built for, the lake. Having the opportunity to ride both these sleds on the snow back to back, well, that's just another one of those best day at work type of scenarios. but having to choose which one is better is something that's absolutely impossible to say. Although this blue one and the way it looks on the snow, it's pretty sweet.